Commander Jiwan stared at the blue marble floating in the darkness ahead. Her hands gripped the sides of her command chair as she watched the planet slowly turn on the main screen. For 30 years, she had explored dead worlds across the galaxy. She had walked through the ruins of 100 civilizations, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. "Are you sure this is the right system?" she asked her navigator. "Yes, Commander," Hyunwoo replied from his station. "This is definitely the Sol system. Third planet from the star. The old charts call it Earth." Jiwan nodded slowly. Every child in the galaxy knew the stories about Earth. It was supposed to be the home world of the humans, those legendary beings from ancient times. Most people thought humans were just myths. Stories told to children about brave warriors who could lift mountains and fly between stars without ships. But the planet before them was real, and it was wrong. Earth was supposed to be green and blue, covered with water and forests. The old songs spoke of cities that touched the clouds and oceans that stretched beyond the horizon. What Jiwan saw through her ship's sensors made her stomach turn cold. The planet was brown and gray. Dead. The oceans had dried up long ago, leaving behind cracked salt flats that stretched across entire continents. Where cities should have been, there were only black scars burned deep into the rock. The atmosphere was thin and poisonous. "How long has it been like this?" Jiwan asked. Sora, her communications officer, checked her readings. The energy signatures suggest the destruction happened about 50,000 years ago. Maybe more. 50,000 years, Jiwan whispered. She had seen old worlds before, but this was different. This felt important in a way she could not explain. "Commander," Minho called from the tactical station. His voice was tight with excitement. "You need to see this." Jiwan walked over to stand behind her security chief. Minho was a big man, built like a mountain, but his hands were gentle as he adjusted the sensor displays. On the screen, energy readings painted bright lines across the dead planet below. "What am I looking at?" Jiwan asked. "Power signatures," Minho said. "Active ones. Something down there is still running after all this time." Jiwan felt her breath catch. That's impossible. Nothing could survive that kind of destruction. "The readings don't lie, Commander. There's a massive energy source about 2 kilometers underground. Right here." Minho pointed to a spot on the continental map. "The old charts say this area was called Geneva." Hyunwoo looked up from his station. Geneva was supposed to be an important human city. The stories say it was where they made their biggest decisions. "Stories," Jiwan muttered. But she was looking at real energy signatures on real sensors. Whatever was down there, it was definitely not a story. She walked back to her command chair and sat down. Her crew was looking at her, waiting for orders. Jiwan had led archaeological expeditions to 47 dead worlds. She knew the procedures. Survey from orbit, take readings, make notes, move on to the next system. But this felt different. The energy readings were unlike anything in their databases. The destruction patterns were too precise, too complete. And there were other things. Small details that made her skin crawl. "Sora," she said, "can you identify the weapon signatures?" The young communications officer worked at her console for several minutes. When she looked up, her face was pale. "Commander, I can't find any weapon signatures at all." "What do you mean?" "I mean, whatever destroyed this planet, it didn't use any kind of weapon we know about. The energy patterns are completely alien. And there's something else." Jiwan waited. The destruction was surgical, precise. Like someone was trying to erase specific things while leaving others intact. The natural features of the planet are mostly undamaged. It's only the artificial structures that were targeted. Artificial structures? Cities, roads, anything that looked like it was built by intelligent beings. Jiwan thought about this. Someone had attacked Earth with weapons that could pick and choose their targets. They had destroyed every trace of human civilization while leaving the planet itself mostly whole. But they had missed something deep underground that was still active after 50,000 years. "Hyunwoo," she said, "what do our cultural databases say about Geneva?" The archaeologist accessed his files. Geneva was supposedly the Location of the Human Council. It was where they made decisions that affected the entire galaxy. The stories say it was built to last forever. Maybe the stories were right, Ji-won said quietly. She stood up and walked to the main view screen. The dead planet turned slowly below them, keeping its secrets. But now she knew there was at least one secret still waiting to be discovered. Minho, can we land near the energy source? Yes, Commander. The atmosphere is thin but breathable with masks. Gravity is standard, no radiation that would harm us. Hyunwoo, what kind of equipment will you need? Full archaeological kit, deep ground scanners, sample containers, and maybe some heavy cutting tools if we need to get through sealed doors. Ji-won nodded. Sora, prepare a message probe to send back to command. Tell them we've found Earth and we're going down to investigate. Include all our sensor readings. Yes, Commander. Ji-won turned back to the view screen. Something was waiting for them down there. Something that had survived the complete destruction of human civilization. Something that was still running after 50,000 years of solitude. The rational part of her mind said they should be careful. The energy signatures were too powerful, too alien. Whatever had destroyed Earth might still be dangerous. But another part of her, the part that had driven her to become an explorer, was excited beyond measure. They were about to become the first people in 50,000 years to set foot on humanity's homeworld. They were going to discover what the humans had left behind. All right, people, she said. Prep the shuttle. We're going down to see what the humans wanted us to find. As her crew moved to obey her orders, Ji-won remained standing at the view screen. The dead planet continued its slow rotation, and she could almost feel its ancient secrets calling to her from the depths below. The shuttle touched down on Earth's surface with a soft thud that sent dust clouds swirling in all directions. Ji-won checked her breathing mask one more time before opening the hatch. The air outside was thin and cold, carrying the smell of ancient salt and something else she could not identify. Stay close, she told her team as they stepped onto the dead planet. We don't know what we might find down here. The landscape around them was desolate beyond anything Ji-won had ever seen. Cracked, ground stretched to the horizon, broken only by strange geometric patterns burned deep into the rock. These patterns were too regular to be natural. They looked like the shadows of buildings that had been vaporized in an instant. This way, Hyunwoo said, checking his scanners. The energy source is about half a kilometer north. They walked across the wasteland in single file. Minho took point, his weapon ready but not drawn. Sora followed behind, her equipment recording everything they saw. The silence was complete except for the sound of their breathing and the crunch of their boots on the brittle ground. After 20 minutes of walking, they found it. At first, it looked like just another crack in the earth. But as they got closer, Ji-won could see that the opening was perfectly round and lined with some kind of metal. The hole descended straight down into darkness, and warm air rose from its depths. How deep does it go? She asked. Hyunwoo dropped a light probe into the shaft. They watched it signal on his scanner as it fell, and fell, and fell. 2 kilometers, he said finally. Maybe more. The walls are artificial all the way down. Artificial how? They're made of metal, but not any metal I recognize. My scanners can't identify the composition. And there are energy conduits running through the walls like veins. Ji-won knelt at the edge of the shaft and peered down. The warm air that rose from below carried a faint humming sound, like machinery running at a very low level. After 50,000 years, something was still working down there. Can we climb down? She asked. Minho tested the metal walls with his hands. The surface has grip points. They're built into the metal like ladder rungs. Someone designed this to be climbed. Or someone wanted to make it easy for visitors to descend, Sora added quietly. They rigged climbing ropes as a safety measure and began their descent into the earth. The metal walls were warm to the touch and seemed to glow with a faint inner light that made their flashlights almost unnecessary. The humming sound grew stronger as they climbed deeper. After an hour of careful climbing, they reached the bottom of the shaft. What they found there made them all stop and stare. They were standing in a corridor that stretched away in both directions farther than their lights could reach. The walls, floor, and ceiling were all made of the same strange metal as the shaft. But this metal was different. It seemed to bend and curve in ways that hurt to look at directly. "This is impossible," Hyunwoo whispered. "The corridor is wider than the shaft we just climbed down. The geometry doesn't make sense." Jiwon ran her hand along the wall. The metal felt warm and somehow alive. Energy conduits pulsed beneath the surface like a heartbeat. Maybe human engineering was more advanced than we thought. "Commander," Sora called from behind them. "You need to see this." She was standing near what looked like a control panel built into the wall. But instead of buttons or switches, the panel was covered with symbols that seemed to move and shift when they weren't looking directly at them. "Are these human writing?" Jiwon asked. "I don't think so," Hyunwoo replied, studying the symbols. "They're not in any of our databases, but they feel familiar somehow." As he spoke, the symbols on the panel began to glow brighter. The humming in the walls increased, and suddenly the corridor was filled with a soft, warm light that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I think we activated something," Minho said, his hand moving to his weapon, but nothing threatening happened. Instead, more panels lit up along the walls, creating a path that led deeper into the facility. It was like the place was welcoming them, showing them where to go. "Should we follow it?" Sora asked. Jiwon considered their options. They could go back to the surface and report what they had found. But they might never get another chance to explore this place. And whatever was down here had been waiting for 50,000 years. A few more hours would not matter. "We follow the lights," she decided. "But stay alert. If anything seems dangerous, we retreat immediately." They walked deeper into the facility, following the glowing path. The corridor branched and split, leading them through a maze of passages that seemed to go on forever. Sometimes they climbed stairs that spiraled upward. Sometimes they descended ramps that curved down into darkness. The walls were covered with more symbols, and occasionally they passed rooms filled with equipment they could not identify. Strange machines hummed quietly. In the shadows, their purposes unknown, but their design beautiful in ways that made Jiwon's chest ache. "How big is this place?" Minho asked after they had been walking for over an hour. "Bigger than it should be," Hyunwoo replied, checking his instruments. "According to my readings, we've walked over 5 kilometers, but we should have reached the edge of the facility by now." "The space is folded," Sora said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. "I know it sounds crazy, but I think the humans found a way to fold space inside this facility. It's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside." Jiwon stopped walking. "That's impossible." So was climbing down a shaft that led to a corridor wider than the shaft itself, Sora pointed out. "Everything about this place is impossible." They continued deeper into the facility, past rooms filled with glowing crystals and chambers where the air itself seemed to sparkle with energy. The path of lights led them through areas that looked like laboratories, past great halls that could have held thousands of people, and by gardens where strange plants grew in soil that glowed like starlight. Finally, after what felt like hours of walking, they came to a great door. It was made of the same impossible metal as everything else, but it was covered with symbols that pulsed and moved like living things. The door stood 3 times taller than a person, and was wide enough for a ground vehicle to pass through. "This is it," Jiwon said quietly. "Whatever we came here to find, it's behind that door." The symbols on the door began to glow brighter as they approached. Then, without any sound at all, the great door began to open. The great door opened silently, revealing a chamber so vast that their lights could not reach the far walls. Jiwon stepped through the doorway and felt her breath catch in her throat. The room beyond was like nothing she had ever imagined. The center of the chamber floated a crystal the size of a small starship. It hung in the air without any visible support, spinning slowly and pulsing with inner light. The crystal was beautiful beyond words, filled with swirling colors that seemed to contain entire galaxies. "What is that thing?" Minho whispered. Before anyone could answer, the crystal responded to their presence. Light poured from its surface, filling the entire chamber with a warm glow. Suddenly, the team could see the full size of the room they had entered. The chamber was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into darkness high above them, supported by pillars that looked like frozen lightning. The walls were covered with murals carved deep into the metal, showing scenes of incredible beauty and complexity. "Look at these pictures," Hyunwoo said, walking to the nearest wall. "They're showing the history of something. Maybe the history of this place." Jiwon joined him at the wall. The murals showed humanoid figures, but they were more detailed than any artwork she had ever seen. These beings looked almost exactly like the various species that now populated the galaxy. But there were subtle differences. They were taller, more graceful, and their eyes seemed to hold depths of knowledge and sadness. "These are humans," she said with certainty. "These are what humans actually looked like." The murals told a story in pictures. The first panels showed humans among the stars, traveling between worlds in ships that dwarfed anything in the current galactic fleet. They showed human cities that floated in space, human colonies on 1,000 different worlds, and human explorers pushing ever deeper into the galaxy. But the humans in these pictures were not alone. The murals showed other species too, beings that looked remarkably like the major galactic races of today. Centaurians with their proud bearing and warrior stance, Vespans with their large eyes and delicate features, even people who looked like Jiwon's own species. "This doesn't make sense," Sora said, studying another section of the wall. "These pictures show humans and other species working together, but that's impossible. Humans disappeared 50,000 years ago, long before any of our civilizations developed spaceflight." "Maybe our history is wrong," Hyunwoo suggested quietly. As they studied the murals, the crystal in the center of the room began to pulse faster. Streams of light reached out from its surface, touching various points on the walls. Where the light touched, new images appeared, moving images that showed the murals coming to life. Jiwon watched in amazement as the stone figures began to move and speak. She could not understand their language, but she could feel the meaning behind their words. These were not just pictures. They were recordings of actual events. The moving murals showed the true scope of human civilization. They had not just traveled to the stars, they had shaped them. Human science had moved entire solar systems, created new worlds from empty space, and built structures that spanned light years. But more shocking than their technology was what the recordings revealed about the other species. The humans had not just encountered them, they had guided them, nurtured them. In some cases, it looked like they had created them entirely. "Are you seeing this?" Minyo asked, his voice tight with disbelief. One section of the moving murals showed human scientists working with primitive versions of various galactic species. They were teaching them, helping them develop, guiding their evolution from simple, tribal creatures to the advanced civilizations they had become. "It looks like humans helped create all the major galactic races," Hyunwoo said slowly. "But that would mean we're all connected," Jiwon finished. "All of us. Every species in the galaxy." The crystal pulsed brighter, and suddenly, the chamber filled with new images. These ones were different, darker. They showed something coming from beyond the galaxy, a force of pure destruction that consumed everything in its path. The images were terrifying. Entire star systems vanishing into nothingness, planets being unmade at the atomic level, civilizations that had lasted millions of years being erased as if they had never existed, and the humans had seen it coming. The final murals showed humanity making a terrible choice. They could not fight this cosmic destroyer. They could not run from it, but they could prepare for it in a different way. The moving images showed humans working frantically to preserve everything they had built. Not just their technology or their art, but their very essence. They encoded their knowledge into crystals like the one floating before them. They scattered these crystals across the galaxy, hiding them in places where they would be safe. But, most importantly, they made sure their greatest creation would survive, the other species, the children they had nurtured and guided. The humans poured all their remaining resources into making sure these species would be ready when the destroyer came again. "They sacrificed themselves," Sora whispered. "They gave up everything to save the species they had created." The final images showed the destroyer reaching Earth, but by then, the humans were ready. They did not try to flee. Instead, they stood their ground and fought with everything they had, not to win, but to buy time. Time for their plan to work. Time for the other species to grow strong enough to face the destroyer when it returned. The crystal pulsed one more time and the moving images faded. But now new lights were appearing on its surface. Thousands of them, like stars in a miniature galaxy. Each light represented one of the hidden crystals scattered across the galaxy. Each one contained a piece of humanity's legacy. There are so many, Hyunwoo breathed. But as they watched, some of the lights began to flicker and go out. The crystals were failing after 50,000 years. Time was running out. And in the deepest part of space, beyond the edge of the galaxy, something was moving again. The destroyer had finished consuming whatever lay beyond and was turning its attention back toward the galaxy that had once escaped it. Jiwon stared at the crystal, understanding flooding through her like cold water. The humans had not just left them a record of the past, they had left them a warning about the future, and a responsibility that would require every species in the galaxy to work together if they had any hope of survival. "We need to get this information back to the Galactic Council," she said. "All of it. Every species needs to know what's coming." But first they needed to understand what the crystal was trying to tell them, because the pulsing lights on its surface were not just showing them where the other crystals were hidden. They were showing them how to activate them, how to access the knowledge that could save them all. The crystal began to sing. The crystal's song filled the chamber with a sound like distant stars singing to each other across the void. It was beautiful and sad at the same time, making Jiwon's heart ache with emotions she could not name. As the melody grew stronger, the air in front of the crystal began to shimmer and bend. Slowly, a figure began to take shape in the shimmering air. It was tall and graceful, with kind eyes and silver hair that seemed to move with its own inner light. The figure wore simple clothes, but there was something about the way it stood that spoke of great wisdom and terrible sorrow. "Greetings," the figure said, and its voice was warm like sunlight on water. "I am Dr. Kyung-soo, last director of the Human Preservation Project. If you are seeing this message, then you have found one of our memory crystals. More importantly, you have proven yourselves worthy of the truth we left behind." Jiwon felt her knees grow weak. She was looking at an actual human being, not a story or a legend, but a real person who had lived and died 50,000 years ago. The hologram was so detailed she could see the lines of worry around the man's eyes, and the way his hands trembled slightly as he spoke. "You must have many questions," Dr. Kyung-soo continued. "I will try to answer them all, but first you must understand something important. You are not here by accident. The crystal called to you because it recognized something in your genetic structure, something we placed there long ago." The hologram gestured and new images appeared around them. These showed the development of different species across the galaxy. But now Jiwon could see the truth that had been hidden in the earlier murals. Humans had not just guided these species. They had carefully shaped their DNA, adding specific traits and abilities that would be needed in the future. Every major species in the galaxy carries a part of humanity within them, the doctor explained. "We did not create you from nothing. You were already there, already growing and learning. But we helped you along. We gave you gifts that would serve you well in the trials to come." The images showed human scientists working with primitive versions of Jiwon's own people. They were teaching them language, showing them how to use tools, and most importantly, encoding specific memories and instincts into their genetic structure. Memories that would surface when they were needed most. "The Zentorians received our courage and our protective instincts," Dr. Kyung-soo said. "They became the warriors and guardians of the galaxy. The Vespins inherited our curiosity and our love of knowledge. They became the scientists and explorers. Your own people, the Koreans of space, received our sense of unity and our ability to work together toward a common goal." Minho stepped forward, his face pale with shock. "Are you saying we're all related? All the species in the galaxy?" The hologram turned to look at him directly, as if it could actually see him. "You are more than related, brave warrior. You are all facets of the same diamond. Different aspects of what humanity could have become if we had been given more time." "But why? Sora asked, her voice barely a whisper. Why did you do this to yourselves? Why did you sacrifice your own species to create us? Dr. Kyungsu's expression grew sad. Because we saw what was coming. The Devourers, we called them. Beings of pure entropy that exist only to unmake the ordered universe. They had consumed 3 other galaxies before they found ours. We knew. We could not defeat them with weapons or technology. The chamber filled with new images, showing the cosmic destroyers in all their terrible glory. They were not ships or creatures in any sense that could be understood. They were like holes in reality itself, spaces where the laws of physics simply stopped working. Everything they touched simply ceased to exist. We fought them when they first came, the doctor continued. For 100 years, we threw everything we had at them. Our greatest warships, our most powerful weapons, our most brilliant strategies. Nothing worked. They consumed our outer colonies, our defense fleets, our research stations. They were coming for Earth, and we knew we had perhaps 50 years before they arrived. So you created us to fight them? Hyunwoo asked. No, Dr. Kyungsu said gently. We created you to survive them, to outlast them, to be ready when they return. The hologram waved its hand, and the chamber filled with a new kind of image. This one showed the galaxy as it existed now, 50,000 years after humanity's sacrifice. Thousands of species living and working together. Vast civilizations, spanning multiple star systems. Technology that, while not as advanced as what humans had achieved, was still remarkable in its own right. You see, the Devourers have a weakness, the doctor explained. They can only consume ordered matter, things that follow the laws of physics, but consciousness, intelligence, the spark of awareness that makes a being truly alive, that is something they cannot touch. It exists outside the physical universe. Jiwon began to understand. You spread consciousness across the galaxy, made sure it could never be completely destroyed. Exactly. We encoded not just our knowledge and our abilities into your species, but our very souls. Every act of kindness performed by a Zentaurian, every discovery made by a Vespan, every moment of cooperation achieved by your people, these are all expressions of human consciousness continuing to exist. The doctor's image began to flicker slightly, as if the crystal was running low on power. But now the Devourers are returning. Our sensors detected them at the edge of the galaxy before Earth fell. They will be here soon, and when they arrive, all the species we created will need to work together. How long do we have? Minho asked. Perhaps 1,000 years, maybe less. But you have advantages we never had. You are many where we were one. You are spread across the galaxy where we were concentrated on a few worlds. And most importantly, you have the knowledge we preserved for you. The crystal pulsed brighter, and suddenly information began flowing directly into their minds. Not words or images, but pure understanding. Technologies that could turn entire planets into weapons. Strategies for fighting enemies that existed outside normal space-time. Most importantly, the locations of all the other memory crystals hidden across the galaxy. But there is something else, Dr. Kyungsu said, his voice growing urgent as his image continued to flicker. Something more important than all the weapons and strategies combined. You must remember that you are not separate, species competing for resources. You are one family, working toward one goal. The Devourer's greatest weapon is not their ability to destroy matter. It is their ability to make intelligent beings turn against each other. The hologram looked directly at each of them in turn. Every petty war between species, every trade dispute, every moment spent fighting each other instead of preparing for what is coming, these serve the Devourers better than any weapon they could use against you. Dr. Kyungsu's image was fading now, the crystal's song growing fainter. We ask only this of you. Remember what you truly are. You are not Zentaurians or Vespans or any other individual species. You are all humanity, continued in 1,000 different forms. You are our children, our legacy, our hope for the future. The doctor smiled, and for a moment his image became as clear and solid as it had been at the beginning. We are proud of what you have become. All of you. Every species, every individual, every choice to help rather than harm. You have exceeded our greatest hopes. The hologram began to fade completely. Go now. Find the other crystals. Unite the galaxy. And remember us not as we were, but as what you are now. Living proof that consciousness cannot be destroyed, only transformed. The chamber fell silent as the last echoes of the crystal's song died away. But the four explorers were no longer the same people who had entered. They carried within them now the weight of the galaxy's true history and the responsibility for its future. Jiwan looked at her companions and saw the same stunned understanding in their eyes. They were no longer just archaeologists and explorers. They were the first messengers of a new age, carrying news that would change everything the galaxy thought it knew about itself. The crystal still floated before them, but its light was dimmer now. It had given them everything it could. Now it was up to them to decide what to do with the gift they had received. For a long time, nobody spoke. The four explorers stood in the vast chamber, surrounded by the fading light of the crystal and the weight of everything they had learned. Jiwan felt as if the entire universe had shifted around her, showing her a reality she had never imagined possible. We have to tell everyone, Sora finally whispered. The whole galaxy needs to know. Tell them what? Minho asked, his voice rough with emotion. That everything we thought we knew about ourselves is wrong? That we're all the same species, just wearing different faces? That there's a cosmic horror coming to destroy us all? Yes, Jiwan said firmly. All of it. Because the alternative is to let the galaxy die in ignorance. She walked closer to the crystal, which was still pulsing with gentle light. As she approached, she felt something change in her mind. The knowledge that Dr. Kyung-soo had shared was settling into place, connecting with instincts and memories she had never known she possessed. It's not just information, she realized aloud. The crystal did something to us. I can feel it. There are things in my head that weren't there before. Hyunwoo nodded slowly. The genetic memories, the ones the humans encoded into all our species. Being here, receiving the message, it activated them. What kind of memories? Sora asked. Before anyone could answer, the crystal pulsed brighter one more time. But this time, instead of showing them images of the past, it began to download something else. Technical specifications, star charts, blueprints for technologies that were beyond anything the galaxy currently possessed. It's giving us the tools, Jiwan breathed. Everything the humans created to fight the Devourers. Weapons that can hurt beings made of pure entropy. Ships that can travel faster than light without using normal space. Shields that can protect entire planets. The information flowed into their minds for what felt like hours. When it finally stopped, they all staggered under the weight of what they now carried. They had become living libraries of human knowledge, each of them holding pieces of the puzzle that could save the galaxy. But there's a catch, Hyunwoo said, studying the new knowledge in his mind. These technologies require cooperation between multiple species to build. No single race has all the skills needed. That was intentional, Minho realized. The humans made sure we would have to work together. They forced us to unite or die. Jiwan smiled grimly. Clever of them. Very clever. The crystal's light was growing dimmer now, but it had one more gift to give. A final pulse of energy reached out to touch each of them, and suddenly they could sense something extraordinary. They could feel the locations of all the other memory crystals scattered across the galaxy. Hundreds of them, hidden on distant worlds waiting to be found. We can't do this alone, Sora said. Even with everything the crystal gave us, we're just 4 people. We need help. Then we get help, Jiwan replied. We start with our own government, then we reach out to the other species. The Zentaurians, the Vespans, all of them. We tell them the truth and hope they're wise enough to believe us. And if they don't believe us? Minho asked. Then we show them. We take them to the other crystals. We let the humans tell their own story. Eventually, the truth will be impossible to deny. They began to make their way back through the facility, but the journey felt different now. The impossible architecture no longer seemed strange. The folded space and impossible geometry made sense when viewed through the lens of human engineering. Their enhanced genetic memories helped them understand technologies that had seemed magical just hours before. As they climbed back up the long shaft to the surface, Jiwon found herself thinking about the future. The galaxy was about to change in ways no one could predict. Species that had been enemies for centuries would have to become allies. Governments would have to be restructured. Ancient grudges would have to be set aside. "It won't be easy," she said as they reached the surface and saw their shuttle waiting in the distance. "Nothing worthwhile ever is," Hyunwoo replied. "But we have something our ancestors never had. We have each other. All of us, working toward the same goal." They walked back across the dead landscape of Earth, but it no longer looked like a wasteland. To Jiwon, now she could see it for what it truly was. A monument to the greatest sacrifice in galactic history, a reminder of what beings could accomplish when they were willing to put the future ahead of their own survival. As they reached the shuttle, Sora turned back to look at the entrance to the facility one more time. "Should we seal it up? Keep others from finding it?" "No," Jiwon said. "Let it stand open. When the other species come here, and they will come, they should be able to see what we saw. They should hear the message for themselves." They boarded the shuttle and lifted off from Earth's surface. As the dead planet fell away below them, Jiwon activated the communication system and began composing the message that would change everything. "Galactic Command, this is Commander Jiwon of the exploration vessel Stellar Dawn. We have completed our survey of the Sol system and have discoveries to report that will require immediate attention from the highest levels of government. Request: priority communication with the Galactic Council. Message begins." She paused, thinking about how to sum up everything they had learned in a way that would not cause immediate panic. "We have confirmed the existence of Earth and have made contact with preserved records of human civilization. The implications of what we have discovered affect every species in the galaxy and require immediate coordination between all major governments. We are returning with evidence that will fundamentally change our understanding of galactic history and our preparation for future threats." Message ends. As the shuttle docked with their ship and they prepared for the journey home, Jiwon looked out at the stars and felt a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of the galaxy, ancient enemies were stirring. But humanity's children were still alive, still growing, still learning to work together. The Devourers would return, but they would find a galaxy very different from the one they had left behind. They would find not one species standing alone, but 1,000 species standing together. They would find not just matter and energy to consume, but something far more powerful. They would find hope. In her final log entry before entering hyperspace, Jiwon wrote, "Today we learned that we are not alone in the universe. We never were. Every star that shines, every world that harbors life, every consciousness that reaches toward the heavens carries within it the spark of those who came before. Humanity is not dead. Humanity is all of us, and we are going home to share that truth with the galaxy." Behind them, Earth continued its silent orbit around the dying star, but it was no longer a tomb. It had become something far more important. It had become the birthplace of hope for the future, and the foundation upon which a united galaxy would build its defense against the darkness between the stars. The message that had brought them to their knees was not one of human superiority, but of universal kinship and shared destiny. And now it was time to carry that message to the stars.